Hello all and welcome back to the next video in the series. If you have not watched one of my videos before, check out my channel and try to get caught up. We're in the middle of creating a full web application, so if you're jumping into it now you might be a bit confused where we're at. So far we've created a code pipeline infrastructure in AWS. We've been developing this library of calls to Robinhood. Robinhood is a brokerage for doing buys and sells for stocks and mutual funds, things of that nature. We have a successful login call to their API. In our last video, we went through and wrote unit tests around what we've done so far. And so this video, our goal is to do some integration tests and to make this integrated with the Spring framework. So right now we haven't had a need to integrate with Spring. It's all been creating a class just with a new keyword. And now we want to integrate this with Spring and test that out. And then to also put this as our first check in our endpoint. So we have a testServices endpoint that I can call from Postman that will go through and run some integration tests for me, and I want to make sure that that is available and invoke it to make sure I can log in and get a token back. So let us get into it. So this is where we last left off. I just kept on recording from last video, so let's go ahead and do a quick cleanup for the imports. We have our unit test down here. What we're going to do is create a new class called retrieve token IT. So with Maven, there's a couple plugins that is there for you by default without you needing to configure or define them yourself. One is anything that ends in test. The other one is anything that ends in IT, which is integration test. It's just a standard that is automatically configured for you. And there are two separate plugins, Failsafe and Surefire. If you want to look them up, feel free. So we're going to name this Retrieve Token IT to specify this as an integration test. Similar to here, we want to run with Spring Runner because this is going to be an integration test with Spring, the Spring annotations. For a test, we'll do @test public void Spring test. Alright, so now we need AutoWire. We want AutoWire in our retrieve token class. Make this private. There we go. So we'll run this guy, see what happens. I think it might actually fail because it should not be able to AutoWire this guy in. It's not being used, so it might ignore it, but I believe it's going to fail it. We'll minimize that side, we don't need to look at that. Yeah, so it fails. So error creating bean, so it's not able to find where this bean is at. So there's no beans of retrieve token. So let's start to fix that. So we'll go in here. This class is more of a service. So it's a client call. So it reaches out, so it's going to be a service call. So let's do @service. Run this again. And it might pass now. might still fail. Yeah, so it fails. Let's see why. Unsatisfied dependency. Alright, so still not able to find this guy. Okay. Oh, another annotation that I need that I did not have is at Spring Boot Test. So this should actually create a Spring context for us. So let's see if that would fix that issue. So I expect it to maybe fail because we don't specify where this REST template bean is defined. So once we do an @AutoWired keyword for this constructor, it will then complain that REST template is not defined anywhere. So we'll need to make a class for that, or a bean for it. So fail to load our context. Cannot create our bean. Yeah, so no bean of type REST template. So we're going to go ahead and do @AutoWired here, just for clarity that this is having AutoWired dependencies come in. So now we need to define this REST template class for us. So what we'll do is we'll go to our client, we'll create a new class. Let's call it config. So this is going to be a configuration class for this sort of any random beans that our application needs. So this is going to be at configuration. This is a configuration class for Spring. It will be a bean for REST template. And for this bean, we just need to create a new object of it. We're not going to configure it anything special at the moment. We may have a need in the future if we need to specify maybe timeouts and things like that. But for now, just a default REST template bean should suffice for what we're doing. And we are green. So we are able to now integrate with Spring context successfully. So now we can actually auto-wire this class and any other classes that may need to log in and get a token. All right, next step. So another purpose of integration tests is you can make sure your integrations with other providers is still good. So here I'm probably going to call the invoke and make sure I can still get a token with my actual login credentials. Something to note with unit tests and integration tests, by convention or by the default, when you build, if you have failing unit tests, so anything with the test at the end of the class name, will fail your build. It will no longer compile and go to the next step. Conversely, for integration tests, anything that ends in IT, if those fail, by default, it will still pass your build, and it'll just tell you how many of those classes, how many of those test cases failed. So if you want your build to succeed and continue even on failures for integration tests, that is a really useful feature. The idea being, we're going to create a unit test or an integration test to log in, but if the Robinhood API is down for whatever reason, it's out of our control. We cannot do anything to fix that, so we don't want it to be a blocker for our builds, so it'll still pass a test case, but still report that it had a failing test case. Or it won't pass the test case, but it will pass the build. So all that to say, we want to actually call our login with real information to see if we get back a token still. So retrieve token dot invoke. This takes in login data. So create that in its own method. So private login data, generate login data, login data equals new login data. I want to return back my login data. All right, so login data dot set device token. I still have my constants for all of these. And looks like I need to do some blur effects now, which is not fun, but that's fine. Login data dot set username. Robinhood username and login data dot set password to my password. Excellent. So now I just call that method to have it return back the data, and get my return back as a token. So now what I wanted to do to know if this test case passes or fails. I want to make sure it's not empty or null, so I have a value. Obviously, if my invoke throws an exception, which would be like a 500, a 401, a 404, so on and so forth, then it would also fail a test case. So I just want to make sure it is not null token. Will this work? Doesn't seem to like it. Fine. Oh, assert. Not. No. Maybe that's what I was thinking of. Org JUnit. Yes. And I wonder if there's also an assert not empty. No. Bummer. Assert true. String utils dot is not blank token. Import that. Get access token. So make sure my token is not null and the actual access token inside here is not blank. String utils is really useful utility methods, as in this one looks like one from JUnit, but this should check both as not null and not empty. Yeah, so it checks for null and checks for empty, which is what we want. All right, so let's go ahead and run this integration test, make sure it works. So Spring context is starting up, which is a good sign still. Excellent, it passed. You can see the beginning part of my token still, which looks like it's valid. So this guy looks exactly like how we want it. So that's the first part of this video is done. So now we want to update our endpoint for pulling this in now, not the test case, but the retrieve token, to run a similar test and have it return back in our payload from Postman, whether that would pass or fail. So going back to this class we made in like our second or third video, it's been a while. What we're going to do is a few things. So this is going to be a little bit ugly for a class, not going to be really clean. But it's going to be something that will allow us to test with. So what I'm going to do is do at AutoWired and pull in my retrieve token class. Since that is not part of the context, I believe this should work. So I'm going to create a new test login method down here. And now I'm going to need the same class to set up my login data. So I'll copy that over. Like so. Alright, and this would probably return back a string. Actually, this would be a boolean, I guess. So it would be a pass-fail response. So if test login, I want to add to my result string login passed, else result login failed. We have some counters in here, so pass plus plus for a passing and fail plus plus for a failing. Awesome. So now I can do similar to all of this. So I'll just copy paste this down. And this is going to be now if token equals null, return false, else if string utils dot add is blank, pass in token dot get access token. Let's say Spring probably has a similar thing in their library. If it's blank, I'm going to turn back. Nope. What is not being string utils dot is blank. We'll do this the old school way. If not, np string dot equals token dot get access token. Actually, if it does equal it, turn false. Otherwise, if both of those come back fine, then I'm going to turn true. So if I get to the end, I know my token is valid. Let's look over this one more time. So token, I invoke it with the valid login data. My token is null. My test case returns false that it failed. Else, if it's an empty string, returns false that it failed. Otherwise, turn true. I call my login method, and if this returns true, I say my login passed and I increment my counter. Else, I say my login failed, increment my failure counter. Awesome. I think that is it for those. So I'll go ahead and run all my tests and make sure that they all pass. That way my build will succeed. Excellent. Next up, I'm going to go ahead and commit these changes. So added integration test for Robinhood login. Also wired and added login test to testing endpoint. Git push. So this should actually kick off a build in AWS, and in a few minutes these changes should be live in our infrastructure. I'm not logged into the AWS console at the moment. Usually doesn't take too long. Let's go ahead and open up Postman. I did not want a Chrome app. I wanted my actual Postman app that I downloaded. Why? Does this not get the right one? I already have you. Why do you not think I have you? this is a bit frustrating. It's not a Chrome app. Why are you saying it's a Chrome app? And we'll see if this works for a moment. We have a little bit of time for the pipeline to get everything up and running anyways. Let's try to actually get into our AWS console to make sure everything deployed successfully. Alright, so log into the console with the admin account to look at the pipeline. It says it succeeded, so it should be live, which is great. So that's fine. I just wish my Postman would behave. Sure. I'm not going to mess with this too much, but one thing I can do well, I already just logged out of AWS, but let's go back to AWS. We'll do this the hard way. AWS console. Sign in once again. Go to EC2. Go to my instance. Get my IP address. And let's do a quick Postman call here. And it's called testServices, I think. Yep, testServices. Send. There we go. So log in past, need a new character, new line character here. Past 1, fill 0. So awesome. We'll do /n for new line /n. I'll say tweak, doesn't really matter what the message is. Push up that chain. I'm not going to show that again. Apologies for the Postman thing not working right away. But we're able to show that everything worked fine. So we have our endpoint call integrated with Spring. Still able to get a token with valid credentials. We've added it to our testServices endpoint, so that way I can call it wherever I am in the world to make sure that my services are behaving as expected. And yeah, so everything is working out really well. Next video, I believe, might try to do a second client call. So build on what we've done so far and maybe get fundamentals for the random ticker symbol. See if we can get that running, do some test cases around that, integration tests, so on and so forth. After we have those two, then we'll probably do a quick pivot and do a redesign of sorts and create our factory. So I don't want to create our factory today because we don't have a need with a single endpoint call for a factory. After we get our second call, then we can start thinking through refactoring to be more scalable. So a factory would work out really well with that. So that will be in upcoming videos, and then we'll just add to that factory more and more client calls for more and more functionality for our Robinhood API. I believe after that, we might poke around with some front end work to be able to pass in your credentials from a front end to log in to see some different things. And then start looking into maybe algorithms to run for you automatically to do your buys and sells and what kind of engine that will look like. We still have other brokerages that we probably want to onboard to. So lots of stuff left to do, but we are making progress in each video. So thank you all for watching. If you like the video and want more content, hit the notification bell and subscribe, all that fun stuff. If you run into any issues or have any questions, want to go over everything in more detail, let me know in the comments below, and thumbs up if you like the video. Thank you all, and I'll see you all next time. Bye.